Hey everyone, Matt from Soundrolling.com, and I'm here with Mark Huffman, and more Huffman. Don't let me get it wrong. God, too many people to interview. But and bit of housekeeping first, just in terms of there should be a comments section somewhere around this video, and you can kind of participate with our chat as well. But let me introduce Moore. How you doing, Moore?
I'm doing well. How's everyone?
I think everyone is well, although I am speaking on behalf of them, obviously. So, yes. So the first question, which is the old tried and true, is just how did you get into sound?
I'm answering, or you, or we all together, or
You. How did you get into?
Okay, it's all about you. Cool. I started a lot of guys that I started in music. And long story short, I moved to LA to work on music, and I had a little bit of sound work here already just through contacts. But it was one of the things people kept asking me the location sound, because most of my work was in music when I started. And here in LA, obviously, there's so much production, and I moved out here. I had a lot of people asking me if I would do that, help them with that. It wasn't something I really knew how to do, but I figured it's something I should get into because there's so much work out here. And luckily, the first movie, I got an offer to work on a movie, and that movie actually fit and went union, which I didn't even really know what that did that time. I basically got really lucky. And from there, are we still online?
Yeah, we are. It's just we're breaking up a little, so I'm just gonna turn off my video, but still be here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then so from there, I basically, the same guy who hired me for that project kind of helped me along, and I think that's something that is really important and is really key, is to get with a mixer. If you're going to be working as a utility sound technician, to get with a mixer who's going to help you, because I know a lot of guys who started out and were with people that didn't help them, and it made them really kind of scared of the industry and scared to get started, because there's a lot of asshole mixers out there. And it's really important to find someone that wants to foster you and wants to make you. And there's a lot of guys who do, but there's a lot of guys out there super jaded and don't see it that way, and just see it as though you're working for them, and it's your job to figure it out. And so I was really lucky, I guess, to answer that question. I was really lucky to get with someone that wanted to help me and wanted to kind of foster my learning, and was on my team basically, and connected me to other mixers. And that's, I think, the best thing you can do, is to get in with someone who really knows what they're doing and really wants to help you.
Yeah, it's how you got in. It is what it is. No, it's just interesting to just pick up on the point of I guess kind of the quote unquote kind of old school way of, like, you go with the mixer, and then you train with them, and then you become their boom op, and you kind of work your way up. And because now there's this mass flood of like creative content, and gear is cheaper, and there's kind of film school courses. A lot of people are just trying to go out and make their own way. I know that I personally try to do that, just because of my trying to move down to London and all this kind of other stuff, and trying to, I guess, survive and do the craft at the same time, and then kind of work backwards to then you meet other mixers, and then you can help them out, and then you can learn other stuff. So it's interesting, right, just to see your approach in terms of finding someone. And yeah, it's true that not everyone is going to be a good mentor as well. That's the other thing. A lot of people, just because they do, doesn't mean that they can teach, essentially.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's
a good question, though.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially because again, so much kind of creative content and everything is kind of coming up. I mean, you also mix yourself. So what sort of projects are you working on?
I think, like a lot of utility sound technicians, I'm kind of trying to move more into the seat of mixing, and so I'm being careful not to advance too quickly. Right now, I'm mixing mostly kind of low budget feature films and pilots, and I've done a lot of documentary work in the past, and still do some of that. But it's one of those things, and I've kind of been warned by the better mixers, the ace mixers that I work with, to not move too quickly, because I have a lot of really great contacts. But if you get onto a project and you're in over your head and you do a bad job, you're going to burn that bridge with those contacts, and your contacts are everything. Your mixers that you work for as utility, that's one set of contacts. Those are the mixers you work for. But then, if you're like me and trying to also mix and start to get, find your way into the mix position more, then you really only have so many chances to burn a bridge with someone. And if you do a bad job, there's not a good chance that you're going to get another call from them, because there's so many, at least here in LA, there's so many good mixers, and they, producers, it's on them at the end of the day if you do a bad job, and the way they see it. So it's, it's nothing personal a lot of the time. They want to make sure it's done right. So I guess I'm being really careful and not climbing the chain too quickly, or not getting in over my head, even though I feel like right now I could mix bigger projects. I'm just keeping it to, 4 or 5 wires, one boom, not a huge setup, keeping my cart super simple, and kind of just getting super comfortable with that and staying comfortable with that. So
yeah, it's very similar to what I'm trying to do. Is essentially it's like a bag cart, essentially, like everything's in your bag, like it was kind of ENG style, but you just happen to sit it down somewhere and have a boom up with you, which is very nice.
Right. Exactly. That's the way of putting it.
But it's really interesting, just because a main kind of task for sound utility is wiring people. And wiring people is becoming kind of more and more essential, more like definitely expected by every single production. Did you kind of find that there was was it just practice? Was there anything that kind of shaved off some learning time?
Again, like I got really lucky, and I got with some really, really good people really early on. So I got extremely lucky, because the people I was working with knew what they were doing so well, as opposed to a lot of people who just kind of start doing it. And I don't think that there's one right way to do it, but I definitely shaved off, I think, probably years of trying to climb the chain, because I was with such good guys. But with that said, I had some awful experiences, and that's the trade-off in doing it that way. Is I was working on big productions, and I was in it over my head as a utility sound technician, but everyone supported me in it. But the trade-off was that I got myself in positions where people got really mad at me, and it wasn't necessarily mixers, but it was like actors, because I think one of the biggest things that I see happens with utility sound technicians is that screw them or make them not get hired again, is that they are weird on set, or awkward, or uncomfortable. And with actors, if you don't have experience, or you don't know what you're doing, if you start touching people, and they can tell if you aren't confident in what you're doing, and no one wants to be touched by someone who isn't confident, and is fumbling around and trying to figure out what they're doing. And my best advice is find someone, it doesn't matter who it is, your friend, your girlfriend, and spend a lot of time wiring them in different clothing if it's something that you really want to get experienced in. Because I did a fair amount of that on set with my boom operator. When we had downtime, he would just kind of test me, and he would test me with different materials and tell me what I could be doing better. And I spent a lot of time just on set messing around with wires and figuring out how to wire my boom operator. Just funny, but that's how you learn. So
no, it's amazing. Everyone's got to have that kind of testing ground, and yeah, I can totally see how, obviously, having someone awkwardly just like fumbling around, like, are you actually the sound utility guy, or are you just like?
And I was that guy. I was awkwardly fumbling around with really big name actors. I won't say names, but people who, you know, one guy in particular, you know, he had a short fuse, and he blew up at me because he could tell I didn't really know what I was doing, and that kind of scarred me a little bit. It would make me question whether I really even wanted to be in the industry. So you really have to be careful there, you know,
and
for yourself.
Yeah. And you mentioned that some other people, you know, have also had like really bad experiences that have kind of put them off being in the industry. Is that just a similar thing of the actual kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess their personality on set?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. Will you just briefly rephrase that again?
I just wondered about some of the other people that you know that have also had kind of similar things that have put them off the industry. Is that is that down to a personality thing, an attitude thing, maybe, of just starting out and being nervous?
I think so, and I think people can tell. Again, if you were on a super low budget thing, or you know, the best way to start, probably, again, this isn't the way I did it, but maybe I should have, is started working on passion projects where you're working for free. So if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not doing something correctly, people can't really get mad at you because you're doing it for free. And I think, I guess, to answer your question, if you start out that way, at least there's some buffer there. But when you jump into it like I did, you have to carry the guilt, and you know, I was getting paid well for my job, and you have to carry that kind of weight on your shoulders that you weren't doing your job well if you get yelled at. So I think it is a personality thing. I think there's a lot of people in the industry who are jaded. It's a hard industry to work in. And there's a lot of people who've been doing it for a really long time, and the people who really know what they're doing oftentimes have been through the ringer. And mixers in particular are not, like, I think they're the ugly stepchild on set a lot of times. Mixers in particular, we are the last to know when there's something that has changed. We're the last to know, we're just the last consideration, honestly, a lot of the time. That's the reality of it. And I think it's important to recognize that early on, because it's more than anything else, you're not in the mixer's back in some corner most times, and you're not on set, and people forget about sound. They forget it's a part of film, and that's unfortunate because it's, you know, half the equation. But the result is that guys who've been working a long time get jaded, and I don't want to be that way. I've worked with a lot of jaded guys, but it does happen, and there's a lot of negative people on set, at least in big budget. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and do you find that might be? I mean, because there's a kind of old thing that was going around at like film school, and even now, like the mixers, or this could apply to any role, I guess. But it's just they get kind of it then becomes the day job. It stops being right. There's no passion project. There's no whatever. It's just turn up. The classic thing is corporate. I don't know what it's like.
Right.
Film, and I'm sure if it's like lower but high budget, if you see what I mean, feature film.
Right. Right, and I don't want to make it sound like it's a negative place to work, because it's really not. It's amazing, and if you're working on a well-oiled machine, with a crew that's, it's just a well-oiled machine, it's just a beautiful thing. Everyone's having a good time. You meet amazing people. There's just everyone's having fun, in the background. But I think it's also important to be aware that there's a lot of, just be aware of it, that if you come across someone like that, don't take it personally, that negativity, because there's just a lot, there's a lot of mixers like that, a lot of people like that, but there's a lot of the other too. It's an industry that it's high stress, and people who are very technical too, I find they like things a certain way, and you have to be very technical for this job. And if you're that type of mind, you want it a certain way, and the result is that you are maybe a control freak. And that's also part of the personality that comes with the job a little bit. So
yeah, I find it interesting that, I mean, our only job on set is to capture clean sound, and every other department is kind of they're kind of building, I don't know, they're building around it. They're kind of doing the opposite. We're trying to do the simple thing, and they're trying to build the complicated thing to make it look more interesting and things like that. But talking more about your team, is there, I mean, you must work with a few different mixers. So is there a kind of a set amount of tasks that you have? Are you like, you're always on wires, you're always on batteries? Like, how about tell me like a typical day as soon as you like walk in on set? What do
Sure, I'll just preface that by saying absolutely. There's a standard. I don't know about in the UK, or for us, there's assumed jobs, and it's unspoken. This is your responsibility on every set. It's not even, you know, it may vary slightly, but basically it's just assumed or just known this is my job. And when I walk in, the first thing I do are these things. So progress is basically when I walk in, I figure out, you know, a lot of times I walk in into let's say I'm filling in, for example, for another utility, and I walk in. The first thing I do is figure out where the sound cart is. A lot of times it's on a truck. So a lot of my job is to you know, find the truck, get all the equipment off the truck. Oftentimes you're doing this alone, actually, because the mixer has a later call. So you have to figure out where the truck is, at least get things rolling for when he arrives, get things off the truck. And very first thing is to find power and get that cart, get it on AC power, so it's not running off the battery. Most, again, it depends on what budget you're working on, but like the bigger budget stuff, we have AC power and DC power. Most of the carts with the mixers I work for have battery that will last up to an hour if we get into a position where we don't have power and we need to roll. So anyway, get that cart power so that you can get everything functioning, get all your wires up. And then from there, start running cable. And like for me, I like to run my video lines first, because the first thing the mixer wants is he wants those monitors up. And if those monitors aren't up, he's gonna let you know, and he might throw a fit if you're getting really close and those monitors aren't up. And then I get all that cable run. It may be. Usually these days we work wireless, even with our booms on the sets that I'm working on. But you may need to run some long XLR run, and you get that done depending on where your first shot is. At least get your cable run so your boom operator can be set up. And then I start rebattering everything. I look at the scene and I see how many actors are in the scene. I start checking those wires to make sure we have reception with those wires. And get those at least set up to some degree. And then, once I kind of have all that dialed in, I'll start jamming slates, jamming time code. Usually our cameras have scratch audio, so you got to get Comtex out to camera along with slates and time code. And that's kind of my progression. Typically it'll vary a little bit. Sometimes camera comes over and they're all frantic and they want time code first thing up, and then you do that. But,
yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's cool. I just had a point before. I was just trying to think about it. So in terms of a time scale of that, because how long are you typically called before, just to set everything up and get all that kind of in motion for the mixer to come on?
I'm usually there about a half hour ahead of him. He's usually there by the time I'm running cables, but he's doing his own stuff.
Yep.
He's doing his daily routine essentially. So I'm usually there a half hour before, and I feel like I'm behind if I haven't gotten the equipment off the truck and have started at least kind of assessing the set we're working on and where I need to start setting things up. So,
and in terms of wires, are you told that there's a specific window to wire people? Are you like said, okay, now they're going to get wired and then they just come to
That's
you?
a really,
How does
that's
that
a really
work?
great question. There's a number of things. Like I'll just answer that question to start by saying there are set ways. There's protocol, and a lot of times production will try to tell you, they'll come running up and say, oh, the actors just arrived, we need to get them wired. And you can say, you can work with them. We're all a team. It's important to be on a team. But with that said, I respond sometimes, and it's important to stay calm and say, look, I'm not ready to wire them right now. You know, I told you that I needed these actors 10 minutes before they go on. So I need some time. So either we're good, you know, we basically need to stop and we need to take some time to wire them. And usually the way it works is a PA will come and ask you, do we need to wire? But if they don't, it should be on your radar that no one's asked you about wiring. And if you do need to get wires on actors, you need to go find a first AD or someone and let them know that we're getting close to camera up and we need to get wires on these actors. And, you know, the first AD will usually handle it. Might be a little grumpy about it because you're talking to him instead of a PA, but that's how it goes. But that kind of segues for me into something, which is that there is protocol, and it's sometimes easy to forget that, and production sometimes falls outside of that protocol, but there's a reason why there's protocol the way things work. There's a progression to how the set goes, and the way that the actors come in and they're in holding, and then they come to you out of holding. And so there should be, if they all of a sudden they send them to set and then all of a sudden they're upset with you that you don't have wires on them, that's not your fault. And it's important to be respectful in that dialogue with them, but also be direct and say, you didn't give me the time to wire the actors. I need to do that. So let's just all take a deep breath, bring them to me. I'll get it done as fast as I can. You know, it's one of those. And there's many examples of that. I see it all the time where people forget that there's a protocol and then they try and blame it on you, that you haven't done your job when, you know, they didn't give you the chance to. So.
Yeah, no, it's always, yeah, it's interesting just because I'm on a kind of indie level production, or even let's say mid indie, top indie. So it's, yeah, things definitely flow a bit more, let's say. So, but no,
it varies. You know, every set is different.
Yeah,
but for the most part, protocol is really important to me, and knowing that you know, there's a system to this, because otherwise it's just, you're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit.
And in terms of when you're wiring them up, are you wiring them up in a certain order? Do they just give them to you? Do you have any icebreakers for conversation?
That's a really good question, because you know, actors, it eventually will come back around if actors feel comfortable around you. And part of our job is to be, you know, personable, and be people that are easy to engage with. And I know there was a really good boom operator that helped me out a lot, who now isn't working because he was working on a set where the actors didn't like them, and they basically fired him because the actors didn't like him.
Wow.
And he was one of these guys that he was a really good guy. He was a little quirky and weird, and like had a long beard, and was one of these guys that was a little strange, but not in a bad way. But just, I think he talked too much on set, the actors, and they didn't like it. And so you asked me two questions there, and I answered the first one there. What was the second part of that question?
The second one was just about icebreakers, but it was all about just the order that they come in.
Right, of course.
Are they?
Yeah, so that really depends on your mixer, who you work with. You know, different mixers like to wire in different orders. Typically, it's in order of dialogue. So you know, you have your transmitters numbered, and you know, it's just, you know, in the order on the page on the scripts, the order that they speak in is most typically how it works. But some mixers have their own systems, and some of the systems are ridiculous, and they drive me crazy because you're constantly moving around wires. But it's you know, it's whatever works for the mixer. That's the most important part. That's your job. So
yeah, do you find that they're always sticking with so the most principal, let's say, talent is always one regardless, and then someone's always six regardless, or is it like that, or does it
Yeah,
flow?
typically, yeah. So that's a good question, because I mean, if you have your principal, your main actor, usually they are the first wire, and they always have that wire, and then from there you wire according to the script. That is true. Or sometimes the two main actors who are always on set every day, you have a wire that's designated to them and a transmitter that's theirs, and you always know that goes on that actor.
And is there any kind of precaution with I don't know, scenes that are maybe intimate? I'm trying to think if there's any situation where, I don't know, maybe you're outside and you need to warm the packs up before you give them. I know I've done that before.
Absolutely, and it's so appreciated by the actors, especially female actresses, and they really appreciate that a lot. Having a hair dryer, that's the way we do it, which is probably the way you do. I don't know, but we have a hair dryer when it started into winter months, and we just blow the transmitter for 30 seconds before it goes on the actor, and they love it, and that's how you get to be pretty much 90% of the actors I've worked with. I've been so cool, and I've become friends with them to the degree, like, they come in and we have a good chat in the morning, and that's the coolest thing, because you can start wiring them and they forget you're sitting there and you're wiring them and you're talking to them, but they forget that they're even being wired, and that's where you want it to be. And it's really great. You make such good relationships that way, and it's really a lot of fun, but it takes a while to establish that. You can't just jump right away into trying to have good conversations with an actor, because they're all different and they warm up to you, and it's really cool, but it takes time.
Yeah, I've definitely had that experience a few times, and it's really good. It's like, okay, you can go now. And they're like, oh, yeah, because
cool.
It's like a weird segue to end a conversation.
Another thing, having fresh breath when you're wiring, super key. People forget about that, but if you haven't brushed your teeth, or even you did brush your teeth but just had breakfast, you're really close. A lot of times you're really close to this person, and it's really important that you are your hygiene is good. That's something that's really important to actors. And they're not going to say it to you, but if your breath is bad, it's just you're shooting yourself in the foot right away. They're not going to set that relationship up good. So
definitely, no, very important point. In terms of the boom operator as well, what's your relationship like there?
I'm a support unit. When I work as utility, I'm a support unit for the mixer and just the whole sound. You are a person to support everyone. So usually it varies a little bit according to the boom operator. I just assume, for me, if I'm working with someone new, that I'm doing all the things. I'm managing his transmitter and his his phantom power. So I'm rebattering his boom pole basically, and I'm always on ear. That's another thing that I messed up a lot early on, is you have your IFB and that's in your ear all the time. Your IFB is how you hear commands from your mixer. It's how you hear what's going on set. Basically, the boom pole is always on set, and you can hear what's going on in your boom pole, and the mixer can talk to you through his mixer, through his talkback. So early on, a lot of times I would get sick of having it on my ear, and I'd pull it off, and I'd be somewhere way off on set, and they would need something, and I was far away, and that's really how you're going to screw yourself, if they need something and you're not there to deliver. So really make sure that you have your IFB on you at all times. So to answer your question, I support the boom operator, whatever he needs, but a lot of times he needs things like water. Maybe he needs water on set, and he'll just tell me over his boom pole, I need water, I need batteries, I need this or that. Or sometimes it's like, hey, I need a second boom in here. And that's another job of the utility as well, is to work his second boom. So you're just, again, you're a support unit for him and for the mixer, of course.
And second boom is becoming, it's probably always become quite common, obviously, depending on lighting. and just whether it's physically possible to do. But in terms of when you're second booming, what is are you, let's say, more who decides what, I assume the boom is doing the most. Yeah, but who's kind of, what's the play usually?
The boom operator absolutely is the one to decide that, unless he doesn't know what he's doing, which I've only seen that, a few times where I've had to kind of jump in and actually take control a little bit. But for the most part, it's really fun to work with really good boom operators, because I feel like I'm a pretty decent boom operator, but I work with some boom operators that are just, they've been doing it for 30 years. And it's just amazing to watch them. So typically when you're in that position as second boom, they'll just tell you exactly what they need, especially because they've been working on that scene and they know how it's flowing. When you were off doing something else, you were doing other things, whatever it may have been, and you don't know the flow of that scene. So typically you're just picking up some spot where he can't reach without getting in the shot. And so usually a lot of times you're just standing there holding steady, but it might be just following an actor into the room, and then from there he takes it.
And in terms of the passing off, how would that, I'm trying to imagine, if someone's walking in and there's kind of two booms, is there a point which completely crosses over? Is it quite, I suppose I'm imagining a situation where they're kind of talking as they're kind of walking in, although I suppose that's a deal.
No, but that's very typical. The way I see it is it's the mixer's job to
bridge
make
the gap.
That call. He can kind of hear when it's starting to, when that actor is getting close enough to the main operator. And he'll kind of manage that. But you can kind of see, it's pretty obvious, when they're coming in close enough, you'll see the boom operator start to swing over to that actor. And when you start to see that swing, you just pull out a shot. Yeah.
Cool. Fantastic.
I'm having fun. This is
you're having fun.
Like
that's good. Well, again, no one has any questions at the moment. So I'm just trying to think more about, let's talk more about your kind of your mixer setup when you're a mixer. What type of gear are you using?
I use a 10-track Nomad, Zaxcom Nomad, which I really like a lot. People are very opinionated about Zaxcom in general. It definitely, there's a lot of guys who hate it. As a company, they hate Zaxcom as a company. It has an interesting history. I really like Zaxcom because of the flex. There's so many options, and especially for someone like me, I'm working on a Nomad, and they have what's called ZaxNet built into the mixer, which allows you to transmit pure pristine audio over your IFBs without any extra hardware. You don't have to have anything extra. It's just built into the mixer. So the ZaxNet does a number of things. First of all, it offers you the ability to have IFBs without extra hardware, but it also, the biggest thing for me, and this is really, I think, why I started getting hired a lot by the same people. I was able, because of I had that mixer, I was able to get hired back because I was able to do things that no one else could for the budget, basically, because of ZaxNet. One of the things that I really appreciate about ZaxNet is you can transmit from your mixer audio and timecode over, it's all wireless, and it all runs through one single box. So you stick that on camera and you're sending continuous timecode JM to camera. And a lot of times lower budget, they're not even thinking about timecode. And it's basically icing on the cake when they get into editing and they realize everything is synced and they didn't expect it to be. They're used to working with just the old school, a lot of the low budget stuff. They still do the old school clap. They are thrilled about that. And that right there will get you rehired. So I really like it for E&G stuff. I don't think I would mix a big project with my Nomad if it, depending on, depending on how big the reach is, because you only get about 25 feet with those receivers for
the ERA.
It's really, What's that?
Is it their ERX? That's the,
ERX2s.
Yeah, it's they're really handy. I had a go on them. I personally have the 688, but I think looking back, because I did a comparison with the 664 and the Nomad, and the Nomad was like hands down like I probably should have gone with that, but now I've got the 688.
Well,
it kind of it's now taking the same level, and so but it's
that's a beautiful mixer, and it's, I have to say, built like a tank. The Nomad feels a little cheaper when you compare the two. There's trade-offs with all of them.
Oh, definitely. And what type of what boom mics do you have?
I really love the 416 for the work that I do, because it does such a good job of rejecting sounds. But more specifically, you can just, you can do anything to it, and you can pound nails with that microphone, and you're not going to break it. And for the lower budget stuff that I work on, it's plenty good. It sounds great. And unless I'm working on something that's maybe a little bit above where I should be, and at that point I have a cement, the Shep's cement, and I love that mic, but it's finicky, and there's condensation issues with it. So if you are working, like for example, I was working on a project and we were moving inside and then outside back and forth a lot, and it was really hot that day, and there's air conditioning on inside, and it started shorting out on me, and that's a well-known issue with it. So basically, you get any moisture on that mic, on the diaphragm of that microphone, it will short out and it will stop working. So it sounds incredible, but that's definitely a consideration. And I get kind of sick of worrying about that. So unless I'm trying to capture the most pristine audio, because I'm working with someone that I know really knows sound well, and I usually just go with the 416.
Yeah, it is tried and true. It's like the AK-47 of the of the arsenal.
Exactly.
And that actually brings me back to being a sound utility. Are you bringing anything yourself? Do you have like a pouch? Do you have like, what's your kind of setup that you're bringing personally, or does the mixer provide it for you?
Great question. I always bring a kit, and this was actually something I wanted to say earlier. Is there are things that you really should have on you, particularly batteries, because you get into situations, again, like when I'm working as a utility, I'm working on really big sets. I'm working on big budget stuff where the sets are huge, and you'll hear over your earpiece that someone's wire went down, and you have to run onto set from wherever you are to figure out why it went down. And usually it's a battery. Could be another issue, but typically it's a battery. And if you don't have a battery on you and you arrive there, that's another 2 minutes to get across to where the mixer's at and then back to set. And that's basically that'll screw you right there. Production gets really mad if they're waiting for you to run around set to go get a battery. So having that stuff on you is really key. I'm making the long way around your question. Basically, to answer your question directly, I have in my pouch, I have gloves because I'm wrapping cable all day, and I don't want to be, a lot of times those cables are running through puddles and things that I don't want that shit on my hands. And then batteries, I have my own earpiece that I bring because some mixers, they don't have them. And so you end up wearing the same headset that the rest of production wears. It's 2 ears. I just like 1 ear. And I have in my kit, I have a number of things in my pouch. I have overcovers, undercovers that you rehired. This, if you are able to come in, fix an issue, and get out, and it's like, wow, that was really cool. That was really quick. Moving on. Let's get the scene rolling. So yeah, really important to have that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting about the elastic bands. Is that like the bongo ties? Is that just for strapping stuff?
I have those because you never know. There's a reason. There's always something comes up and you need one of those. But I have rubber bands because there's like when I'm wiring women, a lot of the times there's a lot of extra slack on the wire. a rubber band will go missing, you know, maybe they'll change wardrobe. A lot of times they'll change wardrobe without you knowing, and then they'll put their wire back on themselves. But then, you know, the rubber band comes off when they do that, and all of a sudden production is saying there's a dangling wire and you have to go in and fix that. And so having those, they're little tiny little rubber bands you can buy typically from like a sound house that are really handy.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of all I had at the moment, to be honest. I don't know if there's anything in terms of I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of the kind of career advice and generally getting in. So I think unless there's anything else you want to say to anyone, we've kind of covered all the questions.
No, I mean, there is a lot of, you know, there's so many parts to being a utility, but at the end of the day, you're really just there to support your mixer. And I guess I would say that, you know, we've talked about a lot here, and I've kind of had to learn to work on a really, really high-end level because of the projects I'm working on, and more specifically because the mixers I'm working with, they expect nothing less than perfection. But you shouldn't be intimidated. You know, with everything we've talked about here, it sounds kind of scary. There's so many parts to it, but at the end of the day, you're really just there to be with, you know, with the mixer and support him. And really, if you do that in a way where you want to learn, the mixer is going to be there to show you and really wants to show you. My experience is that most mixers I've worked with have been excited that I'm obviously interested in what they're doing. And even if you do screw up, you know, it's not a big deal. You know, for the most, I mean, there's different variations, you know,
yeah,
different levels of screwing up, but usually, you know, as long as you learn from your mistakes, they're really excited to work with you, and you don't have to be perfect. You're going to get rehired as long as you are obviously trying hard and focused on what's going on and aware of what's going on set and aware of your job and your role in the machine, I would call it. So.
Yeah, I suppose just to pick up on like a final point is just I guess how you are able to build these relationships with these mixers on kind of the bigger, higher end stuff. Is there any tips that you kind of you think kind of landed you the jobs?
I think not being genuine. I think, you know, you spend a lot of time with your mixer as utility because you're sitting by their side. Typically, I've heard it's a little different. Like over in the UK, we have bigger setups. Like we have a big sound cart, and in addition to the sound cart, we have a follow cart, and sometimes we even have what's called a radio cart. We have a ton of gear. So usually my follow cart, which is the kind of the utility station, is set up right next to the mixer. So you have a lot of downtime together, and you spend a lot of time talking. So if you're basically approach your relationship with them in a way that's not trying to impress them, but more be humble and ask questions and be there with them and make it clear that you want to learn this stuff and want to do a good job, as opposed to coming in and acting like you know what you're doing from the get-go and you have everything dialed in and figured out. That's my best advice. And even in like the music industry, or any industry really, I think if you come in like you and acting like you, I'm speaking from the perspective of a beginner, I guess. Obviously, if you really do know what you're doing, it's important to still stay humble, but you can come in and make it clear you know what you're doing. But for me, I think the reason why I built relationships with mixers who had probably better utilities but continued to hire me, the reason why they continued to hire me is because they could tell I was someone that I was worth investing in, because they could train me the way that they wanted me to be, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess I should have clarified that from the beginning of the conversation, that I was speaking more to, you know, a beginner perspective. But I did get hired by people who had better guys to work for them, and they would just bring me in where they felt like they could. And eventually I got to a place where, you know, I worked enough with them that they really trusted me. And the way you do that is by just staying humble and being open to what they have to show you.
And I guess that's it kind of comes, I guess there's the kind of the people that are there just to gain the experience, to get the credits, to then jump straight onto their own thing, and they kind of always have their head kind of on the longer term game, I guess, rather than kind of I guess being present,
Right.
for lack of a better word.
Right.
Just being on set and enjoying, well, not enjoying the experience, but
But it is enjoying the experience. Really,
yeah.
just enjoying learning. You know, because I've really enjoyed the process for the most part. Learning how to be really good at a utility sound technician, and it's a fun process. And you will have moments where it's not fun, but it's a really cool thing, and it's really cool relationships with mixers, older guys that have been doing it for a long time and have just so much knowledge. You know. So.
Well, fantastic. I think that's a brilliant way to end this part of our hopefully continuing series. But I'll just kind of wrap up, and then we can chat a bit kind of offline. Cool. But thank you very much to everyone who was watching and commenting. And I will say goodbye. I'll be on for another sound chat very, very soon, in fact. And you can subscribe and stay tuned for more of them. This video will be on soundrolling.com/soundclub/soundchat series. So thank you very much, more, and I'll let you say the final goodbye.
Thank you all. It's been fun, and if sound is something you're passionate about, this is a really cool career to get into. I'd leave it with that.
Couldn't have said it better myself.